Welcome to the second edition of Tweed's Pods. Today we have a very special guest who, just as our first guest, will be one of the speakers at the symposium, the Theodore Roosevelt Association Symposium, on October 29th at our annual meeting at Sagamore Hill. John Seerey-Lester was born in England, but came to the United States 35 years ago and became a U.S. citizen in 2011. He's an artist who specializes in wildlife and hunting scenes. His work is magnificent, and you'll see that as we go along. Over the years, he has cemented himself as the premier artist in this genre. When you have seen some of his paintings, you will really understand why he is so popular. But he's more than just an artist. He's also a historian and a writer. His several books contain stories about each of the exciting scenes he depicts. And lately, he has become particularly interested in Theodore Roosevelt. And he has painted over 100 pictures of Tiara's amazing adventures. His latest book is devoted to Tiara, and it's called The Legendary Hunts of Theodore Roosevelt. It is my pleasure to welcome John Seerey-Lester. Are you there, John?
I'm here. And I'm really pleased to be here and talking to you.
Well, we're delighted to have you. Well, let me start off. My first question to you is, what prompted you to paint and write about Theodore Roosevelt?
Well, when I was painting in England, working in England before I moved over to America, I was painting historic street scenes, Victorian and Edwardian England, and I enjoyed painting those. And then I went to Africa and started painting African scenes and fell in love with painting wildlife. And then I came over to America, emigrated over here in 1980. I then started painting North American wildlife, but I always had a passion for history and heritage. Something about, going to Africa in those days with the pith helmets and the way they dressed, it just appealed to me, sitting around the campfires and things like that. So I started painting those, and I just suddenly discovered Theodore Roosevelt. I was raised on Winston Churchill, and he being a British hero, I found that Tiara was an American hero of a similar ilk.
They sure didn't get along very well, did they? Maybe it's because they were too much alike.
Probably, yeah. It appears they met one time, Tweed, in, I think, 1900, and Tiara didn't like him. But, the amazing thing is that both men became great leaders, fascinating people. So I started painting the historic scenes. And, of course, Tiara was just, to me, was quite amazing. But it's really talking to you, Tweed, and coming up to Sagamore Hill when you kindly spent 3 days taking Susie and I on a tour around the house and giving us some historical background that really intrigued me even more, and I wanted to do more with Tiara. So my second book, which was the Campfire Tale, featured Tiara, but not as much, and I thought, well, why not do a complete book on him?
Well, that's great. Yes, I really enjoyed meeting your wife and you and doing the Sagamore Hill trip, and I'm delighted we started this real tradition of yours. Which of Tiara's adventures inspired you the most?
Well, I think it has to be the African trip. I mean, the African safari was such a mammoth undertaking at that time in 1909, to be undertaking such a trip. Nothing like it is today. I mean, they had to sail there and 2 months here and a month doing this, and all before you actually get into the bush. So to me, it was quite an inspiring, and of course I read his book, which was African Game Trails, which was an amazing book. And really, he painted pictures with words. I don't need to tell you, but his way of writing is very intriguing, and I liked the way he wrote, and it inspired me.
Well, that's an interesting, different view, because you look at it with the artist's eye, don't you? And kind of see it differently than the rest of us do. Of all the paintings you've done and events recounted, which of Tiara is your favorite?
I think, well, there's so many. I mean, it's hard to really say. I think this Colorado hunt was perhaps one of the most interesting to me because it's so varied. It was one of the longer hunts. Hunting cougar, he was hunting bear, and There's so many stories that come from that. I mean, the one in particular that really stood out to me was when he shot the cougar as nightfall was approaching. He took a shot at the cougar in the rocks. I won't go into the whole story, but to me it was an amazing feat. He shot it, the cougar ran off, there were dogs down in the gully, and he's about 100 feet up on the rock face, walking along this ledge with his guide, Goff, Goff, and he found the cougar hiding underneath this rocky outcropping, but he couldn't get to it. He could only lean over the rock to see the tail of the cougar, and what he wanted to do was put it out of its misery because he'd already shot and injured it. So as a true sportsman, he was determined to achieve that. Well, he didn't know how to do it, so he suggested to Goff that maybe he could lower him down over the side of the cliff by holding his antlers and wedging himself against the rock face, which is what he did.
He didn't have much fear when he was out in the bush, did he?
No. But what amazed me, Tweed, was that, imagine Goff. Here he is. This is the Vice President of the United States, and he's holding the Vice President 100 feet over a cliff by his ankles.
There have been many photographs of TR published over the years, but few show him really, in action. They couldn't very well. How do you go about recreating these events?
That's a good question, because obviously anything historic like this, where you're on the borderline of the discovery of photography, it's all limited, and the only photographs that were taken were very, very still and stayed, and mainly for political reasons. That he has a lot of photographs. He's the most photographed president probably in history. But there are very few, if any, well, it's like one or two that I know, of him in action. So I have models that come in and pose. I know what gun he was using. I know what he was wearing. I know the era. So I have the outfits, and I dress them in the outfits. I have one friend of mine, Lee Cable, he's an artist, a very good friend. He looks just like Tiara at a certain age. And he rides a horse, and he rides in rodeo, so he can shoot from horseback. So he's a perfect model for me. Unfortunately, he's been badly injured by falling off his horse lately, so I've not been able to use him, but he's recovering from that.
I hope he gets better.
Yeah, so do I. I've got lots more paintings to do.
Yes, you do indeed. TR, a lot of people don't know this, but TR was an avid photographer. He had a little brownie, and he had in the cellar, if they couldn't really call it a cellar, but dug out underneath the Elkhorn Ranch, he created a darkroom. And he often would take darkroom equipment and a black cloth on these hunting trips and develop the films right on site. And I haven't been able to find any of those, or almost none of them. If anybody can find them, I'd love to hear about it. Well, you've completed 3 books on the historic and legendary hunts, and each has featured TR prominently. I wonder, what's next on your agenda?
Well, there's a lot more of TR to do. I know that because I've only touched the tip of the iceberg. I'm fully aware of that. And I enjoy painting him, and I enjoy, researching him. So I'm going to continue doing that. And I need to write a little bit more and do a little bit more about his River of Doubt. I think that was it was a traumatic trip, but I'd like to delve a little bit deeper into that. And I know you, Tweed, you went down there yourself, so...
Yeah, I know a little about that, but it was a lot easier trip for me than it was for my great-grandfather, but it's still pretty tough. But what they could do... I mean, we were in little light rafts, and he was in these huge 2,500-pound dugout canoes.
Yeah.
Well, John, this has been very interesting, and I want to thank you for appearing on this podcast. And you, the audience, if you want to hear more, please come to the TRA annual meeting at Sagamore Hill on October 29th, because John will be part of the symposium, and you'll get to hear a lot more and see a lot more of his works. This annual meeting will be a very exciting event. You will dine in the moonlight on the lawn of Sagamore Hill, and we will be celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Park Service. And our special guest will be the director of the Park Service, John Jarvis, who tell us some stories about his some 40 years in that service. We'll also have some special tours of the recently renovated house, and we'll hear, this is really exciting, we'll hear the winner of the local high school public speaking contest. That's always a high point, and they're really quite touching. We'll also have the captain of our favorite aircraft carrier, the Theodore Roosevelt, and he'll be telling us some stories about the Tiara in action. John, by the way, has agreed to donate one of his paintings of Tiara, and we'll have that in our silent auction, and you'll get a chance to bid on it. So please come and celebrate with us. You can learn more at our website, www.theodoroosevelt.org, or call our offices at 516-921-6319. I hope you've all enjoyed this podcast, and please feel free to pass it on to anybody you think might be interested. So, until next time, bye.